Guys, I want to thank the sponsors of the podcast. I want to thank GoHunt.com, my friend Cody Nelson, the glassing guru, the optics authority. He's the optics manager at GoHunt.com. If you have any interest in buying optics or have any glassing questions, whether it be tripods, spotting scopes, rifle scopes, range finders, anything to do with glassing, give Cody a call, 702-847-8747. That's extension 2, or you can email him at optics@gohunt.com. You can also send him a text or call him on his cell phone at 602-399-3699. Guys, right now at GoHunt.com Insider, you can take advantage of the free trial. Go to GoHunt.com/JScott. You're going to be able to take advantage of a free trial of the Insider. GoHunt is always adding more value for their Insider members. They've now added real 3D maps as a part of Insider for no additional cost. What an incredible value. Very soon they're going to have their mobile app up as well. Go to GoHunt.com/JScott and sign up for a free trial. If you're already an Insider member, it's automatically part of your Insider membership. And you can just go to the Maps tab up at the top once you sign in as an Insider. I also want to thank KUIU Ultralight Hunting. That's the gear that I wear on all of my hunts. To find out more, you can go to KUIU.com, KUIU.com. They're a direct-to-consumer company. They sell everything off of the KUIU.com website. I also do a lot of question and answer on my Instagram where I'm answering questions about guys wanting to know about gear about KUIU, so tune into my Instagram. I want to thank KUIU for their sponsorship. I also want to thank Phonescope.com. Use the JScott20 promo code. You're going to get a 10% discount on all orders. And I want to thank allelk.com, home of the Bugle Mule. Use the JSO10 to save 10% on all orders. The Bugle Mule attaches to your bugle, and it's a great little carrier that holds 3 elk calls right there on your bugle tube, and I can't wait to use it this season. Again, thanks to all the sponsors of my podcast. Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we have my friend Clay Bundy of Clay Bundy Outfitters on the line. Clay, how you doing?
Good, thank you, Joey. Appreciate you calling me.
Yeah, for sure. We're sitting here August 2nd. Obviously, the archery hunt on the Arizona Strip is going to be starting here in a couple weeks, and I just wanted to call and get kind of a forecast, if not a conditions report on how things are looking out there.
Okay, thank you for thinking of me. So, you know, I've really spent a lot of time thinking about this and comparing moisture from last year and this year. You know, last year was one of the best years ever, and then this year, and trying to decide, you know, what is really making the difference. You know, so a forecast. So I'm going to start for 13A.
Gene, come get her.
This year, I believe that we have more big deer than we had last year there. And, you know, we've had some new deer show up that have gotten bigger. And some of the big deer that were there that we were hoping that would really get big have got bigger. But there's also some deer that we were following that maybe went down a little bit, and it could be their age. Then you jump to 13B. It's not anywhere what it was last year. It's way off. And so in my thoughts, I you know, for the first thing, it hasn't rained for 2.5 months until 2 days, or last Friday, it stormed there at our place, about 6,600s, but it wasn't a big wide storm. It was pretty isolated. Certain spots got it, and so it didn't cure really anything. And then but I think the reason that 13B is so far off is it was so good last year, and so many deer got killed that were at the right age. Where this year, the we don't have that age class that we need to get giant deer. And in my scouting and in my trail camera pictures, there's a lot of young deer that are going to be good next year and the year after. So I think the prospects for years to come are still good, but this year is not.
Not going to be what
13
you
B's
thought.
off.
Yeah.
Yep, 13 B's off.
How much of that, Clay, is, you talk about deer that got shot last year in age class and they got, shot at the right time. And then you feel like there's quite a few good young deer, but they're just not showing what they were showing last year. How much of that do you feel like being dry since I last talked to you? The last couple months has been very, very dry. I mean, do you truly attribute a lot of it to the fact that it has been dry and they just haven't been able to pour it on? Or does maybe it go back to that last year, yes, a bunch of big deer, and the year before some big deer, and it kind of maybe took a little bit of toll on the age class here for a brief period, and that might have more to do with it than the feed?
Well, that's what I keep weighing in my mind. Because I know how critical the moisture is at the right time of the year. That's it. That's another thing is, and I think we talked about it last time. We had great winter moisture here, and the ground is still producing because of that winter moisture. I was just on there was a big fire down on Mud Mountain about a month ago. And I was down there messing around checking cameras, and the guyetta grass hits up 6-8 inches tall after a fire, and there hadn't been a storm since. But so there was so much moisture still in the ground, and the feed is the cattle feed's good. The cliff rows, the brush is still in really pretty good condition, even after 2.5 months without rain. So that's what is throwing me back thinking, it may be a little bit more to do with this year with not the age class, especially in 13B compared to 13A, where 13A there was a lot of deer that made it. We talked about that before.
Right. And don't you think, I mean, A and B, they ebb and flow. It seems like A had for a couple of years obviously produced some big top end giant deer, but for a year or two it seemed like there were, kind of what you're describing going on in B, that there needed to be, we had that giant year in I think 2010 where just a bunch of big deer got killed in A. And it just kind of ebbs and flows, and it sounds like the age class is back up a little bit in A and maybe down in B. But you look at too, the tag numbers have been bumping up and increasing over the last handful of years too, and as good as you guys are up there with tracking and trailing these deer and finding these deer, I go back to potentially maybe the tag increase of just slightly bumping up the tags over the last, say, 7-8 years is finally a year like this has kind of showed its colors of, it's just what happens.
I agree. And as you was talking, especially you think about 2010 for A, I mean, it got massacred. There's so many big deer got killed up there, and then there was no age class. And then it's taken, 5 to 7 years or even more to get back to where there's some good deer. And now it's good again. But yes, I mean, that's so critical. And I talk to the game wardens up here every time I see them, cause they're the ones that put in the recommendation of how many hunts, literally every time I see Luke Thompson, I say, you got to keep the numbers down. And, they've done pretty good in a certain spec, but then, they get pressure to keep bumping the tags up. and I get it, but
Yeah.
these two units here are so uh, so they're just the best two units possibly in the world,
Yeah.
and so it's critical to keep the numbers down. So like on a year like this, the everything doesn't get killed. You need those deer to be able to make it. The ones that are off just a little bit or don't, a 3-year-old deer, a 4-year-old deer needs to make it.
Well, you take those deer, those 3 and 4 year old deer last year where we had, um, better moisture, right? Better monsoonal moisture. Even though it was not good, we did have it's better than this year. This year's worse than last year from monsoonal standpoint, isn't it?
Yes.
So, I
Yes.
mean, you wonder if those deer would have lulled out as well with the lackluster monsoon. I mean, I think both monsoons are pretty rough, but this, from what I'm hearing, this one is definitely rough. But it just goes to show that age class is a huge important factor in growing big deer. You can have phenomenal genetics, but you've got to have some age.
Yes.
Okay, so but you're seeing when we talked a couple months ago, you were saying that B or A was, you were still kind of on the fence and thought there'd be some good deer, but you weren't like totally over the moon, like, yes, it's going to be phenomenal. But it sounds like potentially A is going to eclipse B this year when it's all said and done. Do you truly feel like, once the hunts are over, it will not surprise you if, the majority of big deer and maybe even the average is higher in A?
I really feel that'll be the case you know, if people make the shots and that you get to, yeah, I do.
Okay.
I really do.
With this archery hunt coming up here, closing in fairly quickly, for those hunters in A and for those hunters in B, with it being dry, you said you had a storm last Friday. Historically, I shouldn't say historically, it seems like the archery hunt, everything's dry and deer are just coming in like clockwork. And then all of a sudden, about the time the archery hunt starts, just some big 5-inch rain comes, which we would all welcome from a standpoint of, good for the country. But what if things didn't change between now and the archery hunt? Do you think it's going to be very productive sitting water and being able to have deer on a pattern?
Yes, I do. It is going to be productive to sit water, but it also then depends on whether these big deer that you're hoping to get with the archery hunters are hitting in the daytime.
Right.
I mean, there's deer that are clockwork. Every couple of days they're hitting, but they're hitting at night.
That's pretty common, right? I mean, the big deer getting really nocturnal because of how hot it is. That they literally come on a string, but the reality is it's in the dark.
Yes, and that's what I'm seeing. I mean, there's deer that are hitting, good deer that are hitting in the daytime, but so and I think we're going to want to sit water. But you know what? I'm literally fasting today for rain.
Yeah, yeah.
Not both for my cattle and also for the deer.
Yeah. Speaking of the cattle, I mean, are they fleshy? Are they looking really good, or are they starting to show signs of pretty dry?
That's what's interesting. That's what has made me think so much. Is, to be honest, they look better than they did last year.
Okay.
And
that's kind of a head scratcher then, isn't it?
That is a head scratcher.
Yeah.
But yet again, we had so much moisture November, December, January, November, December, that, we had 5 inches that time.
Yeah.
That fell out there on most of the strip. And this is crazy, but there's part of that there's in some of that, you can drive some of that place and there's little cracks in the ground, and that's like, have you ever pulled up to a dirt tank and it's dry and there's cracks in it, it's like there's moisture down there. There was so much moisture, and then it kind of cracks.
Right.
And I mean, to think that after a fire and no rain, that there's 6-8 inches of dieta grass growing.
That just tells you there's moisture content in the soil that's good. It's still
Yeah.
good. What
And
about
so
what about dirt tanks as far as dry dirt tanks? Are a ton of the dirt tanks dry?
it is so pathetic out there. I mean, I helped this rancher TJ Atkin, and he was down to 2 weeks left, and he had to move his whole herd. He caught a couple ponds of water, but he has cleaned 30 ponds, dirt ponds that are dry on his place this year. There's hardly any dirt ponds that have any water.
Speaking of when you clean those ponds out, do you have to, coat them in bentonite or anything like that, or does usually just cleaning the silt and the sand out, does that help in kind of solidifying that bottom?
So you clean them out. You clean them out with loaders. In the old days they used to do them with cats, and it was a mess. But you clean them out with a loader, and what you do is you don't go below what it originally was dug to, and they'll hold again real good. The first rainstorm, if you fill that pond up, it'll probably sink down 4 feet, just almost like overnight. But then they hold pretty good.
In other words, you don't want to crack that seal, the original seal. You want to keep that in place, and then hopefully get a big rain to fill it up, and then almost settle it and harden that bottom, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what happens.
But if you crack that seal, I mean, it's anybody's guess. That water just drains out like you literally have a drain in the bottom, right?
Yeah, until it seals. And then, like I say, that if you crack that bottom and then a big storm hits, it'll drain a lot of it out, but then it'll kind of seal itself, and then it'll hold after that usually, unless there's some real sinkhole problems. And some ponds do have that.
We also have antelope hunts, I believe, coming up. Aren't there some antelope hunts August and September?
Yes.
What is it looking like for them? How do they look? With dirt ponds being dry, what's the status of the antelope hunt, you think?
They're congregated. They've got some decent growth up here this year, though. I think they're going to be okay. From what I understand about antelope, they will grow, and then they kind of almost shrink back a ways if it does get dry. I know they look pretty good. I mean, on camera, I've got some pretty dang good ones this year, better than what I've noticed before.
Gotcha. And Clay, I get some questions. There's some elk. There's a few head of elk up there that have kind of moved in. I think they're coming from Nevada, but I'm not sure. But do you see that herd as something that's growing, or do you see that still being fairly just sporadic?
Sporadic. And in fact, the big bull that was up here got killed last week up here.
It did?
Yeah. I've got a couple cows on camera, and they're not together. They're scattered throughout the unit.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't seen it grow in the last 5 years at all.
Which is a good thing for the mule deer.
Yes.
So the dreaded question that I'm sure you've been having, and I hate to even ask it, but I mean, do you feel like B is in tough enough shape that, is it worth considering some guys throwing their tags back and waiting for another year? Or do you still think that, there's good deer to be killed?
There's good deer to be killed. Just not as many.
It's just hard when you're used to seeing 50 that are, over 210 and, you're slobbering all over yourself. You just have to back those numbers off, right?
Yes. And again, my goal for everybody, if I could get every hunter a 200-inch deer, that would be it'd be phenomenal hunt.
Yeah.
But I get it. Everybody sees the pictures and everybody 220 plus. So I think realistically in B, your numbers better come down. And if you are a max tag holder, max point holder, and a resident, I'd probably turn my tag in. It'd be consideration.
Sure. Think about
I
it.
don't know that we're there. I wouldn't do it today. I would
Sure.
still wait a little while. But if you don't have max points and not a resident, I would hunt it. That's silly to turn it back because you may never draw again.
Yeah, if you don't have max points, whether you're a resident or non-resident, it's one of those things that, you drew by the grace of God, so you might as well hunt it because you're not going to draw again.
And even if you're a max point and a non-resident, I wouldn't turn it back because it's still maybe 20 years.
Yeah. So A might be the shining star. Again, it's one of those things that if it stays dry, as far as archery hunting, do you think, just from a deer coming to water standpoint, do you think A will be more productive on archery? Not talking size, just talking if guys were going to sit, is A more productive sitting or is B more productive sitting? Or is it a wash?
I think it's a wash. I don't think there'd be much difference in that. There's not that really much elevation to change much as far as being too hot or hot coming in or not.
Mm-hmm. With it being dry, are the deer congregated? Are the bucks fairly congregated? Whereas we've seen years where it's kind of wet everywhere and there's water and ponds everywhere and they're real spread out. They must be kind of congregated.
Well, they are, but that's a little different too. It's in glassing, it's almost like you don't see the big herds of bachelor bucks as much.
Okay.
And I don't really understand that. I'm still learning a lot too.
What has your lion count been as far as, are you seeing more, less, or the same amount of lions? And I always wonder, when it's real dry like this, are the lions actually hitting the water more? Or, what kind of action are you getting on your cameras with lions?
I've got more lions this year than I did last year. I've got 2 unique pictures of lions, a deer coming to the water and the lion charging it.
Really?
Both the deer in the screen. And I also got an interesting picture of a coyote just inches away from getting a young fawn.
Really?
Off of water.
Well,
so
that's always the concern, right? When it's dry and there's the ponds are not full, it kind of allows those predators, both coyote and lions, to kind of focus in and hone in on those deer that have limited water source, right?
Yeah, they just literally those lions just lay there and wait. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They know they've got to come, and so yeah, we desperately need rain. I don't know whether it's almost too late to affect the antler growth.
Yeah.
For this year, but we need it so that the deer then will go into the rut in good shape.
Sure. Do you think if we get some storms over the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, even month, do you think it will make a big difference in as far as overall health? And if we could get some pond water filled up, spread them out just a little bit.
Yes, it'll make all the difference for the future.
Yeah.
It will.
Well, it's one of those things. It's a reality, and that's why I wanted to have you on the podcast and just get kind of the conditions out there. And there's nothing we can do to change it. All we can do is pray for moisture, and it's hard when you come off such a banner, unbelievable year last year. I know it probably feels like a little bit of kick in the stomach, but the reality is it's still the Arizona Strip, and anything can happen. And I'm excited to see how the archery hunts and the rifle hunts go for you guys. And I appreciate you coming on and kind of giving us a on the ground insight as to what's going on up there. So as always, it's great to talk to you.
Thank you. And I don't think we're really too far off an average year. I really don't.
Right.
So
Okay.
so yeah, it is the Arizona Strip, and there's going to be some big deer killed.
Yep.
So
Well, I hope you guys get a couple of them. Tell Parker hello, and I appreciate you always coming on and sharing with us. Okay, Clay?
thank you, and you better come up and help us.
I'll see what I can do. God bless. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.